Hey, what's up, fantasy football fans? Week 9's in the books. Week 10's about to get started soon. I'm going to talk about three things. Number one, I'm going to talk about Fool's Gold. Number two, I'm going to talk about players to add, top three that I believe. And number three, I'm going to talk about three players that you probably want on your roster moving forward with the playoffs starting and going from there. Pretty good week for me. I had ended up going 5-3. The worst league that I've been doing. I did really well. I did pretty good. I got the win. Most of the leagues that I was doing bad in, I actually won. So pretty excited about that. Still undefeated in that one league. I just keep rolling. But yeah, and then the Raiders snuck out the W, and my Notre Dame Fighting Irish, we got that win against Clemson too, so that was pretty cool. Like I said, pretty good week. I ended up winning a Pick'ems week 2 also, so I don't know. I think I won like $100, $150 for that too, like in a pool. So that was pretty cool. But anyways, let's get started here. I'm gonna talk about the three players that I believe are fool's gold. And these are players that just they had big weeks, but I don't think it's gonna be sustainable, and I think it was kind of one of those anomalies. Okay, so first players first. I'm gonna talk about Olamide Zaccheaus. He's one of those players that I was explaining is fool's gold that I believe because Calvin Ridley was out this week, and if you look at his stats, right, Calvin, that was this week, and then he had a 16 points this week. That was when Julio Jones was out. So Julio Jones, Julio Jones is the number one, obviously. Calvin Ridley is the number two. It's pretty much 1A, 1B. And then Ronald Gage is actually the number 3 in line. So he's, in their absences, he's been doing well. But other than that, I wouldn't want him going forward. So he's fool's gold to me. Here's another one, Duke Johnson. David Johnson is the man right now. And he went out, I believe, what was it, for concussion? But anyways, David Johnson's the guy. Up until then, this is PPR, by the way. Look at his points that he's been getting. He has not been having a big season. 15, and even then he had 15.3 points. So people are going to be like, oh my gosh, he had a big week. Come on, like, why don't we add him? No, he's not going to be getting the touches. He's not going to be getting the carries. Maybe this week there's a chance David Johnson still doesn't play, but I still don't want him on my team. He's not worth the ad. He's not worth sustaining. And then number 3 here is Richie James. Richie James, same thing, kind of like Olamide Zaccheaus. He had one big week, and let's just look at his points right here. So if you look at those, none of those guys right there, or none of those points are even worth paying attention to, other than his last one there. Same thing for him. He has Brandon Aiyuk and he has Deebo Samuel that are both banged up. Aiyuk was actually on COVID, and then Kendrick Bourne was actually the one who had COVID and gave it to Aiyuk. So I don't want him either. Like I said, it's one of those anomalies. I know the Niners are banged up right now, but as soon as Deebo Samuel comes back and Aiyuk comes back, he's not going to be getting hardly any targets. So those are players that I think are fool's gold. Just stay away from it. Don't even try. 3 players that I do think are worth the ad are gonna. I'm gonna talk about them right now. Number 1, I'm gonna talk about is Curtis Samuel. He's for sure somebody that definitely has been playing well, right? He's been playing well. He's been getting a lot of targets, a lot of touches. He's a wide receiver, but he's actually been getting a lot of a lot of carries too. If you pay attention, his numbers have been pretty much going up consistently. I mean, will he get 20 higher than 26 against the Bucks? I don't know about that, but I would consider him right around the 15 to like the 12 to 18 points range from here on out. Like I said, his touches, his carries have been getting very consistent, and they give him touches in the goal line, which is pretty nice. So to me, he's my number 1 ad this week for sure. And then let's also talk about Kalen Ballage. Now this backfield is kind of tricky, but so so Austin Eckler's the number one, right? He's been out for a while. He's There's reports he's still gonna be out for like another month or so. Um, that's a while. So the next two players in line are Josh Kelly and Justin Jackson. Well, Justin Jackson got hurt, and Justin Jackson was playing okay. Josh Kelly has been fumbling a lot, hasn't been playing too well. So neither one of those guys have been like stepping up to the plate to be the player. Pope last week, Tremaine Pope, he had a good week, but once again he got a concussion. Kalen Balaj though, he looks like he's a veteran, so he looks like he's been like when I was watching the game against the Raiders, obviously, he was putting his foot down and just running and running hard. So I really liked what he did. He's Let me show you a little bit of his stats here. He's been getting some carries and some points, but like I said, he hasn't been getting too many. So, but I going forward though, I do think he's gonna be the guy to have on the back, in that backfield over Josh Kelly and Justin Jackson. So he's someone I would he's someone I would consider adding for sure. And then the third player that I want to talk about here, Jordan Wilkins. Technically he's a second stringer behind Jonathan Taylor, but man, Jonathan Taylor has not been good at all, and he's kind of been killing me because I've had him in. I was pretty high on him, and I had him in quite a few leagues. Let's check here if you pay attention to some of his stats. Right, not the best, but not the best, but 5.8. Right. That was against Baltimore last week, and Baltimore is obviously a very tough run defense. But the week before that, it was against Detroit. That's when it looked like he practically almost took the starting role from Jonathan Taylor. He's somebody that I would definitely consider adding. I wouldn't necessarily play him just yet. I would wait to see one more week. But even though he played, he didn't have a big game against Baltimore. He got the bulk of the carries, and Jonathan Taylor fumbled, and he didn't really even play a lot after that. So Jordan Wilkins did play a lot, and I just feel like I said, I wouldn't start him just yet, but he's someone I would have on my bench for sure, going forward, and maybe he can be somebody that can be a big player in the future for the next couple weeks or so. DJ Dallas is someone else I kind of want to mention. That's fool's gold. He's definitely fool's gold. He might have one more big week, because I don't know what the status of Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde is. I know Chris Carson might play, but I don't know if he's going to be getting, like, if he's going to be 100% or if he's just going to be back on the field. So he may have one more decent game, but that's it. He's done after this. For sure, this will be his last week unless they get hurt again or re-aggravated and both of them are out. But I don't see that happening because Carlos Hyde is going to be coming back next week too. So I wouldn't want to add DJ Dallas. So going forward, these three players that I'm going to talk about next are the players that they've been pretty good. You might have had them in the second or third round, maybe the fourth round. One of them's going to be a quarterback, and the quarterback that I'm going to bring up, he's been picked up in like the 10th, 11th round. Not a lot of people picked him up, but all these players have they've been having decent seasons. I don't want to say they've been having great seasons. They've been having decent seasons, but going forward, I'll show you some of the stats and kind of my mindset on what I think from these players and why I think they're gonna be having bigger seasons, and they're gonna get better, and they're gonna be playing a lot better. Okay, so one of the first guys is my man Josh Jacobs right here. Boom, boom. I love him. So if you take a look at his stats real quick, he's oops. He's had a decent year. He hasn't had the worst year. He hasn't had the best year. Right? He's been pretty good. Okay. Would you want more production out of a first round draft pick or a second round draft pick that he probably was? Yes, right. But if you pay attention to his schedule, this is just one part of it. If you pay attention to the schedule, the only teams that really concern me are Indy and then Denver. You're not going to be playing him in week 17 because most leagues don't end that late in the season. Most leagues end at week 16. But also, too, just based off of the schedule, Denver, right, and Indy, but also in addition to that, the Raiders' offensive line had last week they had 3 starters that were not playing because they were banged up. This week they should be getting back 2 of them, and then next week they should be getting back their third. So this entire year, the Oakland Raiders have not played with their preferred starting lineup at line. That sounded terrible. This entire year, they have not played with their entire starting offensive line. So they love to run the ball. John Gruden loves to run the ball. They want to pound the rock. That's just how the Raiders are built. Everything is built off of the run, play action pass, Henry Ruggs go deep, or Darren Waller over the top or over the middle, right? So going forward, especially with the weather too, I think he's still gonna have a big season, and I think his stats are gonna increase a lot. Okay, the next guy that I'm gonna bring up is gonna be Drew Brees. Drew Brees has had a pretty good year. He has not had a bad year, right? So um, let's take a look at his stats here. Right, boom, boom, 14, 14, 23, 15, 21. Right, so same thing if you look here. The only team that I'm a little concerned about is going to be maybe Philly. Their pass defense is pretty good, and Denver again, right? Everybody else I'm not too concerned with at all. So he has a pretty decent championship schedule coming up too, right? And one thing I want you to remember about him is he hasn't had Michael Thomas this whole year. He hasn't had him. He hasn't had Emmanuel Sanders for a couple games. So there was times when he was playing with second, third, fourth stringers at wide receiver, and he was still putting up pretty good numbers. So if you have like a decent quarterback and you have maybe some depth like at receiver or tight end or something, and you notice that somebody has Drew Brees, dude, I would throw out a trade right there and try and see if you can get Drew Brees on your squad going forward. Same thing with Josh Jacobs too. If you have somebody like maybe I don't know like a Joe Mixon or something like that, and you got Joe Mixon on your squad, and you got some depth at tight end or receiver again too, or even quarterback. I would try and get Josh Jacobs on my squad and trade away Joe Mixon or something like that. And then here's a third guy I want to bring up, guys, is Cooper Kupp here. Cooper Kupp, same thing. He has not had a bad year. He has not had a bad year by no means, but for whatever reason, people want him to like put up 20 points a week every week, and that's just not realistic. He's only had 2 really bad games, but moving forward though, look at his schedule. I guess you can consider Tampa a roadblock. Um, and New England actually is a roadblock. But one thing I want you to remember is technically Cooper Kupp isn't even the number one receiver. So when they do play New England, Stephon Gilmore is actually going to be guarding Robert Woods, not Cooper Kupp, which is important because that's why Cooper Kupp gets a lot of those big plays, because he's a great number 2 receiver. He's a great number 1, but technically he's not a number 1. He's technically their second wide receiver. So those are all my players that I like and dislike. Good luck, guys. I hope you're doing good. Hit me up with some questions. Hit me up with some advice if you think I should be doing something different or something like that. I'm always up for some suggestions. And yeah, good luck, and I hope you guys' teams win. I hope this advice is helping you out. Other than that, I will see you next week. Go Raiders.